Welcome back, cadets. We're going into Unit 4, Chapter 5, Lesson 1, Citizenship and Government. This is the last chapter in your Let 4 curriculum. Challenges and fundamental principles to your government. If you would like to follow along, and I recommend you do, in your cadet notebook, it is going to be page 129 in the notebook. And in your textbook, it is page 117. I'm sorry, 116. All right, so let's take a look at citizenship and government. Your essential question for the day: how do our nation's fundamental principles affect debates about current issues? So what are our fundamental principles, or what is meant by fundamental principles? Fundamental means your basic, primary, of central importance, and your principles are a basic truth or idea that serves as a foundation. So basically, these are our basic beliefs that set up our country, that we are built on. All right. In many ways, the history of our nation shows that the building blocks of our society is today. In this lesson, we're going to talk about your fundamental principles from our own history and the values of our government relate to contemporary issues. This is one of those classes where I would like to do classroom discussion. But here you're going to be asked to consider different viewpoints. You may have a viewpoint of your own. You may have to research. I want you guys to give me informed viewpoints, not just what you've seen and heard on TV and Facebook and social media, etc. Put some facts behind it. I want you guys to use your critical thinking skills to discuss your viewpoints. All right. I don't expect everybody to agree with my personal viewpoints, and I'm going to try very, very hard not to express my viewpoints in this class. Okay. I want you guys to develop your own ideas and ideals, but you got to back it up by facts. So the United States began as an experiment to see if certain ideas about government would work. Do you think the fundamental ideas about our government have changed? I don't know why I clicked that for. So do you think the fundamental ideas about our government have changed? There's no right answer for this one. The fundamental principles are the ideas that guide our government. So in theory, they are the foundation for the new laws and the regulations that are created. So we're going to look at the 5 fundamental principles. We're going to talk about this next. We're going to talk about the 5 fundamental principles that guide our government. And I'm going to talk about them a little bit, but I'm going to need some feedback from you guys through the Google Classroom. Give me your ideas. Give me your, have we changed? Do we need to change the way we look at our government? And why? And show me how and why, etc. Okay. Change my mind. Keywords of fundamental principles: surveillance and transparency. We've already talked about the first 2. What is more important, the rights of the individual or the rights of society? I'm sure this is one of those that, this one's personal. Your personal thought. What's more important? What's more important? The individual rights, the society rights, are they both equal? Does it depend on the circumstances? So you guys come up with your own answer for this one. All right, next. What's more important to you? Preserving individual privacy rights or tracking criminal terrorist suspects? Ooh. Are they equal? Does it depend on the circumstances? Let's talk about this one for a second. So the individual privacy rights, everybody has the right to their privacy, right? What about sex offenders? There's a sex offender registry. Do they have a right to not be judged after they've done their time? Or do we have a right as a society? Or do we have a right as a society to know when these people move into our neighborhoods? That's a big debate. Okay. Let me know how you guys feel about it. Do we have the right to know when there's a felon for whatever reason has moved into our neighborhood, or do they have a right to their own privacy? How about actors? Do actors have a right to privacy? Why are they always in the public light? To be fair, in my opinion, if they wanted their lives to be private, they wouldn't stand up on a stage and blurt out their political, social agendas. What is more important, the government's ability to help people or the principle of limited government? Should the government have an overreaching ability to give people money and help them out, or should the government be limited to just governing? One of the debates here is if sometimes their ability to help people, they say, hey, we're going to give you this money, but you got to do this way. I'll give you a for instance happening in our Congress right now, as of this recording. The Congress is coming back to help the U.S. Postal Service. Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, says she wants all the Congress back so they can pass a bill to help the U.S. Postal Service. President Trump has repeatedly said he would sign any bill helping the Postal Service out as long as they don't put any of their extra stuff in it. So what are the Democrats doing in the House? They're putting things on it to say, hey, we want to give free money to illegal aliens. They keep attaching riders to these bills that say, hey, we want to give money to these guys to do this. We're going to pass the post office bill, but you've got to allow unlimited mail-in voting, or you've got to allow undocumented immigrants, people who are in our country illegally, a check. Okay, and that's exactly what's happening. There's another question. Or people who are in our country illegally, should they be authorized government benefits? And now we wait for the page to load. There it comes. Why are fundamental principles? Fundamental principles are the ideas that guide our government. They work at the consent of the governed. That's the consent of the people. Representative government, they represent the people. Limited government, individual freedom, and the rules of law. The thing we've got to remember about our government is they work for us, we the people. We elect these people, and we expect them to go to Washington, D.C. and make decisions based on what is good for the people. Okay? We tell them, hey, look, this is what we want you to look out for. We want you to put our best interest at heart. We want you to put our best interest up front. And unfortunately, that's not been happening for a lot of years now. These guys get up there and they vote against what their people want. I will give you a prime example. In the state of North Carolina, in the last governor election, the people of North Carolina voted for a voter ID law. We said we want to force people to show their identification some way, shape, or form every time they vote. Then we voted for Governor Cooper. What's the first thing Governor Cooper did was he vetoed that. He said, no, you're not going to have to show your ID to vote. Okay. So that is an example of a politician who's not putting what his people's wants in front of him, and not putting his people's wants and not supporting his people. Okay. Let's move on. Pull out the text here. In your textbook on page 118, you're going to see something, they call it content enhancement. It's a story about supersized sugary drinks. And I remember this at the time. Michael Bloomberg, the mayor of New York, decided that he wanted to ban, well, the city board of health wanted to ban supersized sugary drinks because people in New York were getting too fat. All right. Mayor Bloomberg argued that the public supported it and that it would save lives. Supporters of the supersized rule also pointed out if people wanted more sugary drinks, they could still just buy 2 or 3 smaller drinks. All right. May not seem like an important issue, but many people and businesses were outraged. They said the government shouldn't be able to decide what size drink they can buy. So basically, look at it like this. Do you have the right to buy a large sugary drink, a soda, right? Do you have, and it's right here on the slides too, do you have the right to buy a large drink if you want one? How about this? Do you have the right to do anything to your body that you want to because it's your body? Well, their idea was the sugary drinks were bad for you. They're making you fat. They were shortening your lifespan, and they were inherently bad for you. So they said, let's cut out sugary drinks. Now, mind you, this came after a period when they started banning smoking in buildings, because not only was it bad for the person who was smoking, it's also bad for the people around them. All right. Is this an example of government outreaching their control? My body, my choice, right? So the court struck down the rule, but not because of individual freedom. They said, hey, look, you've got the right to mistreat your body if you want. But what they said was the Board of Health did not have the authority to make such a rule. By choosing among competing policy goals without any legislative delegation or guidance, the board engaged in lawmaking and thus infringed upon the legislation of the city council. So it got struck down because the Board of Health banned it and they didn't have the right to make laws. But it brings into the question, do you have the right to abuse your body? You know, we can talk about sugary drinks. We can talk about marijuana usage. We can talk about smoking, anything along those lines. Do you have the right to do this kind of damage to your own body? Some people may say yes. It's my body, my life. Another issue is when your body, your life overflows. Alcohol. You have the right to drink alcohol at the age of 21. You do not have the right to drink and drive. Why? Well, because the alcohol impairs your judgment and then you put other people's lives at risk. Okay? So, can I drink at home after 21? Absolutely. Stay home. Can I go out and drive? No, because now you're risking other people's lives. So, if I'm drinking soda, sugary soda, am I risking other people's lives? No. This is one of those ideas, one of those classes when I wish I had you guys in here so we could debate some of these. Rather than me just running through, because you guys may have different ideas and you guys have different backgrounds and stuff like that. So you got to look at the fundamental values or the fundamentals for our principles, our patriotism, what makes us Americans, truths, diversity, equality, justice, the common good, individual rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What is justice? Bad guy getting what he deserves? What about our justice system in the United States? Is it always just? Or does our justice system work out for the person with the most money? Just a question. Fundamental principles is a reminder of our government's role and purpose. It doesn't prevent changes in laws as society changes. Remember, when they came as the Constitution, it says here that Congress can still pass laws, constitutional amendments, can do sweeping changes. When our founding fathers established our Constitution, they said, we know the world is going to change. They understood that the laws would have to change. That's why they left the Constitution open for amendments. If you guys remember, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution came quick, fast, and in a hurry and became the Bill of Rights. All right, so Congress can still pass laws. They can still change the Constitution. It's been done. Women were given the right to vote. It can even be revoked itself. They passed an amendment to ban all alcohol in the United States, and then like 15, 20 years later, they recalled that one and banned it and said, no, this is silly. Okay. That's what happens when you let one group have too much power in government. There was a group called the teetotalers who got to pushing it, and they got it passed. And then they discovered later how bad it was, and it was not fair to everybody across the board, so they got rid of it. What about our individual rights versus the right of society? Very common with conflict of rights, all right? Like we talked about the sugary drinks. I have a right to drink a sugary drink if I want one. I can make myself fat if I want. Is it good for me? Probably not. Is the society's right to tell me I'm not allowed to drink over a big gulp sugary drink? Maybe, maybe not. Are they trying to protect me from myself? Typically, when individual rights decrease, the rights of society increase. So the more of your rights they take away, the more society gets hold over it. They get more rights as a society. And it's a balancing act between the threats and benefits. Example here on the screen. In order to stop terrorism, you get to be scanned and searched at airports now. I remember a time when you didn't even have to walk through a metal detector to go through go to get on an airplane. All right. Now they always asked you, did somebody give you a package or something? But I'll tell you, in the mid-70s, nobody cared about that. You just got on a plane and you went. And then when people started hijacking airplanes, they started breaking down on it. So now you get searched and your bags get searched to make sure that you don't have anything that can harm the airplane or the people on the plane. Why do we have to have less than 2 fluid ounces of liquid on a plane? Same reason, because somebody brought more than 2 fluid ounces of a liquid. They determined that a liquid explosive would need more than 2 ounces to cause damage to the plane. Crazy, right? Why do we take off our shoes? Because people have been known to hide box cutters and stuff in their shoes. So we lose that freedom to just board on a plane to get searched for the public good. Go through your individual rights sections in your student text. That's going to be on page 119. Look at the section on your rights with police. Remember, police's job is to protect society against bad people. Where a lot of people are having problems is when bad people do bad things and the police have to get strict with them. Do they go overboard sometimes? Sure they do. Everybody does. All right. Being a police officer is a tough job, especially if somebody's out on drugs. Current events we've had recently is cops injuring people who were strung out on some sort of drugs. In case you guys didn't know, people on meth, actually get stronger. Meth and crack, they get stronger. They don't know what they're doing. And police literally have to beat them down to subdue them and arrest them. But people don't understand that. Remember, the police do have the power to approach you and ask questions. You do need to identify yourself to a police officer if they request you to do so. In the state of North Carolina, you also have the right to film a police officer. They don't like it, but you do have the right to film a police officer. And just remember, it doesn't necessarily mean they think you've done something wrong. They just might be looking for information. Okay? Their job is to enforce laws. They may show you their badge or whatever. And, if they stop you, there's also a difference between being detained and being arrested. Let me put this out. Just because they put handcuffs on you doesn't mean you're being arrested. Most of the time, they're putting handcuffs on you because they're afraid you might be a threat to them, and they just want to be safe. All right? They have families. They have kids. They want to go home at the end of the day, too. All right? And if it's all you're cool and everything's cool, whatever, then, of course, they'll take the handcuffs off of you. But it's just a way to keep them safe. All right? If they read you your rights, the right to remain silent, the right to an attorney, etc., now they've suspected you of committing the crime. All right? Once again, remember, you have the right to remain silent. When they say anything you say can and will be used, remember, they're taking notes and they're going to write all this down. So everything you say, they can come back later and say, hey, did you say this? All right? You have the right to refuse a search of your home or car unless they have a warrant. There is also a thing referred to as, I can't think of the word, reasonable suspicion, reasonable doubt. If everything is inside your car, there's no reason to search your car. Where it becomes suspicious is when things escape your car. For instance, the smell of marijuana. Okay? If they can smell marijuana outside of your car, that gives them reasonable suspicion to search your car. If you could keep that smell inside your car, they'd never have a problem. Some of you may know marijuana smells very, very bad, and it has a very strong smell. Okay? Your best bet with that stuff is to not do it at all, because you can smell it on people. It smells like skunk. It really does. And I hate the fact that I know this, but I've been teaching high school long enough to have learned what it smells like. All right. If you're stopped for a traffic violation, such as speeding, stay in your car. The police, keep your hands on the steering wheel. Again, that is for the officer's safety. That's also for your safety. If they see you reaching around and digging in the car, they're going to think you're trying to reach for a gun and that you may be trying to shoot them. Just keep your hands on the steering wheel and let them tell you how it's going to go. Be polite. Okay? Let's see. Never run from the police. Don't touch a police officer or argue. Resisting arrest is a crime. Also, if you guys remember the sexual harassment, sexual assault class, and we talked about the difference between harassment and assault, any type of physical contact can be assault. So if you touch a police officer, that is assault. I have seen a situation, I've been in a situation where we had to arrest a guy for assault in Iraq because he was charging at somebody else, and he actually hit one of the police officers there on his way past him. He kind of hit him with his shoulder. That dude got shipped back out of the country, back to the U.S. with a federal assault charges. All right. If you're arrested, you have the right to remain silent, refuse to answer questions. You have to refuse to sign documents, and you can ask for an attorney. All right. You also have the right to make a phone call. The attorney thing. If you get pulled in, the very first thing you can say to them is, I want an attorney. Now, understand, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to hide. If you have an attorney, if you request an attorney, You're going to be coming out of pocket. They may appoint you an attorney. Here's a little sidebar, guys. If you get arrested on Friday night, you're not going to see an attorney until Monday morning. You do not have the right for an attorney to come in on the weekend. So you're going to sit in jail until the following Monday whenever they can get an attorney to come in and see you. All right. Fundamental principles remind us of our government's role and purpose. Review here. Typically, when the rights of individuals increase, the rights of society decrease. Individual rights associated with police interactions include individual rights associated, the right to remain silent. No, they cannot. You can refuse a warrantless or home or vehicle search. You do not have the right to resist arrest. B, the right to answer questions untruthfully. No, you do not. You must answer all questions truthfully. That will get you thrown in jail. To refuse a search with a warrant. No, you do not have the right to refuse a search if they have a warrant. They have a warrant. They have already proven to a judge that they have probable cause. That's the word I was looking for earlier. Probable cause. And you do have the right to obtain an attorney, the right to refuse collection of evidence that may harm you, to obtain an attorney, and to make 3 phone calls if detained. Nope, 1 phone call. You have the right to remain silent, to refuse a warrantless home or vehicle search, and to obtain an attorney. That answer is definitely going to be D. Remember, always ask for an attorney. Anything you say prior to you having an attorney there will be written down, and they can use it against you. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to hide. But an attorney is there to help keep you safe. These guys have got a lot more experience asking and pulling evidence and questions off of people than you have answering their questions. All right. Specific individual rights. Let's talk about individual versus societies. How do the rights of the individual hamper the police? Well, think about it like this. What if they had the right to come in and search your house at any time, any way, shape, or form without showing probable cause to a judge and getting a warrant? That means Nelson, it looks like that truck's pouring in with his death. It literally means if they didn't have to get a warrant, they could just come knock on your door and walk into your house and seize anything they want, anytime they want, with no reason, no time, no schedule, nothing like that whatsoever, whether they thought you did something or not. So a warrant absolutely does protect you because they have to give probable cause to a judge, and the judge will sign the warrant and say, yes, you can search your house. If they don't show enough evidence or enough probable cause, the judge will not issue them a warrant. How would you balance the right of citizens to own weapons with public safety rights? There is a very solid concealed carry class system in America. There is a background check. They check. I know when I did mine, they checked about 7 different hospitals to make sure I was mentally sound enough to have a concealed carry permit. If there were widespread crime, how free would you feel to walk down the street, drive your car, or conduct other daily activities? There's a good question. So if there's widespread crime, like we saw in Portland, Oregon, and Detroit, Chicago, some of these places like that, where people just running down the street, stealing people's cars and rioting and looting and stuff like that. How safe would you feel? Should the law force you to marry people who don't have the same religious beliefs? There's a good question. Should they make a law that says you can only marry somebody of your own religion? Should our society acknowledge all religious holidays by allowing students and employees to stay home on those days? All right, that's one of the reasons why we have separation of church and state. Because what if every religion had a holiday and everybody stayed home at those holidays? We'd never get out of school. We'd never have summer vacation. Do you think individuals have enough rights in our nation or too many rights? having been around the world, I can tell you we have a lot more rights and a lot more freedoms than any country out there. I've been in countries where you do not have the right to say anything against your president or governor because they will have you put to death. I mean, people talk bad about the U.S. I want them to go to one of these third world countries. Saddam Hussein used to do that. You talk bad about Saddam Hussein, he cut your tongue out. All right. So read the rest of the chapter. Read the rest of the chapter in your textbook. Read about weapons rights. Absolutely want you guys to read this stuff because this is the stuff you need to know about. I will tell you that you will find situations where your civil rights, your rights are being ignored and stepped on every single day, and you don't know it. And you let it happen to yourself because why? Because you don't know what you don't know. So I want you guys to read this entire chapter so you can get an idea of what your rights actually are. All right. Consent of the governed is primarily about democracy. We have voted one way, shape, or form about which rights we want to give up. True or false? Conflicting ideas about limited government raise questions about the size of government and its ability to do the job. I knew that answer before I clicked it. Absolutely. Some people say we have too much government, that they should be worrying about running the country and not running our lives. All right. That's another debatable point. All right. So your assignment for tomorrow in the Google Classroom, I want you guys to have a discussion about civil rights, your rights, individual rights, consent of the governed, representative government, rule of law, role and size of the government. What rights do you guys think have been stepped on by our government? Okay.